global economy is in freefall. Lehman Brothers has vanished. Credit markets are frozen. Fear has paralyzed the world. In Silicon Valley, a generation of promising technology companies, Sequoia Capital, are on the brink of extinction. Inside the headquarters of Sequoia Capital, the valley's most powerful venture firm, there is no panic. There is only cold-headed clarity. They summon the leaders of every company in their portfolio to an emergency meeting. The presentation they deliver is not a message of hope, it is the diagnosis. The title on the first slide is a tombstone, R.I.P. Good Times. This moment would become a legend, a brutal yet vital act of foresight that saved dozens of companies and solidified Sequoia's reputation, not just as an investor, but as an oracle. But how does a firm learn to see the future so clearly? How do they consistently identify the seeds of world-changing companies decades before anyone else? So let's take a deep dive into the mindset required, because it reveals how we can move from simply predicting the future to actively funding it into existence. Sequoia Capital was founded in 1972 by Don Valentine, a man who viewed the world with an ingenious and sentimental precision. He wasn't interested in fanciful ideas or charismatic pitches. He was interested in markets. His core philosophy, the doctrine that would guide Sequoia for decades, was built on two foundational pillars. First, target massive markets. Valentine was famous for his disdain of what he called niche idea. He believed even the brilliant team with mediocre product could find a success in tidal wave of market demand. A direct quote from Valentine captures this perfectly. Second, bet on the jockey, not just the horse. While the market was paramount, Valentine understood that execution was everything. He looked for the founders with what he called an unfair advantage. People who had a deep technical knowledge, an obsessive drive, and an almost painful clarity of vision. This doctrine was immediately put into practice with two investments that he would define the firm. The first was Apple Computer. In the mid-1970s, the concept of the personal computer was a hobbyist dream, but Valentine saw the market trajectory. He recognized that the falling cost of microprocessors would inevitably lead to computers in every home and office. This was the tidal wave. Though he was initially wary of Steve Jobs' temperament, he saw the immense potential of the market they were creating and made the bet. The second key investment was Oracle. By the early 1980s, Valentine observed that proliferation of computers from companies like Apple was creating a new secondary problem, an explosion of digital data. This data needed to be stored, organized, and retrieved. He correctly identified the relational database market as a next massive wave. Oracle's founder Larry Ellison was a precise kind of driven, intensely focused founder that Valentine looked for to dominate such a market. These early successes were no lucky guesses. They were the result of discipline and repeatable method. By the 1990s and 2000s, under the leadership of partners like Michael Morris and Doug Leon, Sequoia replicated this model with staggering success, backing companies like Cisco, Yahoo, Google, and YouTube. They became the undisputed kingmaker of Silicon Valley. Their brand was a signal of quality. An investment from Sequoia meant a startup was destined for greatness. But this success introduced a classic strategic paradox, one that every successful organization must eventually face. How do you maintain an edge once you're at the top? The external threat is always new competitor, but the internal threat is complacency. As a venture firm grows, managing billions of dollars, the pressure to deploy the capital can sometimes outweigh the discipline to weigh the perfect opportunities. The culture of brutal intellectual honesty that Don Valentine had established was now the firm's most valuable and most fragile asset. The 2008 financial crisis would be the ultimate test of whether that culture has survived. The external factor was the complete collapse of the global financial system, but the internal challenge for Sequoia was how to react. In a crisis, organizations often freeze, but Sequoia did the opposite, demonstrating the concept from military strategy, Colonel John Boyce's OODA loop. It is observe, orient, decide, and act. Now it is easy to talk about the theories like this, but what was the direct, causal link between this meeting and the survival of a company like Airbnb? Let's follow the chain of events. Observe and orient. In September and early October 2008, Sequoia observed the market collapse and correctly oriented themselves. This was not a temporary dip, but a fundamental economic reset. Investment capital would vanish for at least 18 months. Decide. They decided only the rational goal was survival. Growth was no longer the priority. Cash preservation was. Act. RMP presentation was the action. It was direct order to their portfolio. For a young company like Airbnb, this meant a complete strategic reversal. They immediately froze hiring, slashed their marketing budget, and focused every resource on extending their cash runway. As a result, this painful pivot, executed in October 2008, gave them the crucial hashtag. Their competitors, still observing the chaos, didn't make similar cuts until months later in early 2009. By then, Airbnb was already operating on a lean, sustainable model. That extra 4 to 5 months of cash runaway they created was a literal difference between survival and bankruptcy in a world with no venture funding. That is a direct causal link between the OODA loop and a legendary outcome. Sequoia enduring success is not a magic. It is a method. Their story provides a powerful set of tools and lessons that can be applied whether you are building a company or simply navigating a career. Target tidal waves, not ripples. As Valentine taught, the underlying market is the most powerful force in any venture. Before falling in love with a product or an idea, first develop a rigorous and sentimental conviction about the size and trajectory of the market itself. It is the single most important factor for outside success. Master decisive action in a crisis. The 2008 crisis proved that the speed and quality of decision-making is a critical competitive advantage. As OODA loop demonstrates, observing and orienting is useless without a decisive action to follow. Cultivate informed intuition. Early-stage investing often involves making huge decisions with very limited information. This case is analogous to psychological concept known as thin slicing, the abilities of our unconscious mind to find patterns and make accurate judgments from narrow windows of experience. Sequoia partners have cultivated this ability over decades, relentlessly studying thousands of companies. This is not psychic intuition. It is a trained, data-informed form of rapid cognition. The lesson is to relentlessly study your domain until you too can see the critical patterns that others miss. Sequoia Capital continues to practice its unique alchemy of foresight and discipline. Their story is the ultimate proof that the future is not something that simply happens. It is something that is chosen, funded, and built by architects who have the courage to make the bet on tomorrow.